it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bump into your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bump into your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass.
What's going on? Welcome to the Really Charlie Podcast. My name is Charlie Perry. Are Melissa Ortega Costa and Ross Grace Jr.
Hey, Charlie.
New Bedford School Committee members that I'm very proud of. Very, very happy to have them on my podcast. Once again, Melissa is unofficially my first guest ever, but we never got that going.
He forgot to hit record.
Yeah, I did, Life and times of a podcaster,
Well, you did a show and it didn't record?
Yeah, it was crazy. And it was Zoom. And because of that nightmare, I no longer use Zoom unless someone's telling me to. But I basically just boycotted it because that was such a good podcast, and I was
nobody will ever know about.
No, never, ever.
Well, we were talking earlier. My goal for today's program is to make it through without one technical glitch. If we do that, then I feel like we've accomplished something today.
We're doing all right. Yeah, we're working off this laptop in my house. Yep. So, but all right. Melissa's gonna be muting herself because she has company. She has people, future votes in her, dog barking, lawnmowers going off, stuff like that, But I'm very proud to have her on here, along with you, Ross.
Thank you, Charlie.
Waiting for some other members to come on eventually. We got two more shows, so hopefully we can get the rest of them on here. Yeah. And just want to let you two know that regardless of what you're doing, session may be over. You can use this podcast for whatever you wish. If you're doing something throughout the summer, please let me know, and I'll gladly just do a flash podcast and put you guys on for whatever you need.
Well, the school committee continues to meet during the summer. We have a July meeting, an August meeting.
Okay.
So we don't stop.
All right. Well, feel free. Oh
no, we lost Charlie.
You good, Charlie? Yeah, I'm still good. Charlie, you're breaking up the screen a little bit on my end.
Melissa, how you hear me? Good?
Okay, I heard that.
All right.
It's just freezing a little bit. But I think people can still hear and see us. So,
we'll just take the show over, Charlie. You go ahead and relax.
Yeah, we'll start off. First of all, Charlie, as always, thank you for your voice, your steadfast leadership in the community, and as always, just being a platform for everyday folks, Charlie. It's exciting to be on the Really Charlie podcast again. I'm not going to speak as much today because I've been on it regularly. For people who turn on the first time, is Charlie and I had an idea because a lot of people don't really understand what goes on in the school committee. Prior to myself running, and I'm sure Melissa will say, similar things. It just seemed like a group of people sitting at a table raising their hands. And so the idea we had is just sharing personal experiences, some of the things that's going on in the school committee, to spread awareness. And we thought the Really Charlie podcast would be, be really, really good for that. So thanks for having us, Charlie, again. And for people who are unaware, is the school committee meetings are the first Monday of every month. And then we try and follow up with a podcast on Wednesday. Last time we had Colleen DeWicki, who did an outstanding job. And today we have Melissa Costa, the very first Latina, to sit on the school committee seat. And we're still learning the ropes, And again, I don't want to take too much time because, like I said, Melissa's going to be on while Charlie's fixing things. Melissa might as well let people know what you're about, why we're on, and hopefully we have a nice discussion and share people what we've learned and what we'd like people to know about what's happening.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I am actually the first Latin person ever voted in New Bedford city politics ever. And we know based off of our data that we got from the school committee that our school district is made up of like 41% Latino youth.
Yep.
And yet I am the first person ever elected in any kind of official capacity within the city of New Bedford. So we definitely have a lot of work to do. And I'm only one person, right? And I can only speak for my own experiences. I can't speak for an entire community, but we know how important it is, as we keep bringing across these conversations about like equity, how important like representation matters, and, having a diverse workforce and making sure that youth of color are represented across all areas, especially. So, I am grateful to have this opportunity. Like you said, Ross, right? We're still learning like the whole Robert's rules, which I think is, and my son actually brought this up the other day. Like, Robert's rules was founded here in New Bedford, and that is a methodology that is used across governing bodies across the nation and internationally. And that was started right here in New Bedford.
Yeah.
We don't learn that history.
That's a testament to just, the little gems that are all throughout our history and all throughout, the culture of New Bedford. And Melissa, you were just talking about being the very first Latina. And again, this election, the way I look at it, it was kind of like the word I use, like transformative. Whether you look at Shane Burgo getting on the city council, yourself, myself, the way I think the city was sending a message. And sometimes, Melissa, sometimes I get overwhelmed. It's like, people have this vision or idea that we're going to come in, like change everything. And I know that we're going to do our best. A lot of the stuff that we do, like you said, is very procedural. We have a governing body.
Yeah.
And I think we have people who are working to find, what can we do to make sure we're supporting things, but also enhancing what's going to schools. Except New Bedford has a very unique history of whether you call it struggle, of progressive thought. We talk about our history, whether it be the Underground Railroad, the 54th Regiment, the people who lived at Sergeant Carney's, Bill Kazan. And so when we're seeing a person like Melissa Costa making history, that came from people saying, all right, we want a little something different. And people came to the ballot box. And every time I'm on the show, I talk about the importance of getting out, no matter what, till the day of the next election cycle. We should consider the importance of getting out and exercising that right, because it does make a difference. It's not to say that Melissa and I and the other people in there can all of a sudden change the entire school committee, but by having different voices, different perspectives, shaking up the dynamics, it reverberates up into the other things going on. So I'm very proud of that, Melissa. And I don't know if you want to talk about that. It's not about patting ourselves on the back, but recognizing where the city's at and where we kind of fit in with all that in terms of us getting elected this cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to have a diversity of thought at the table, right? Otherwise you fall victim to groupthink, where everyone just like kind of nods their head. I know that we're still learning. I'm still, I am on the finance committee. So like I was sharing with you just prior to coming on the show, like I've been meeting with Andrew O'Leary, just really trying to get a deeper understanding so that way, we're asking those questions, so to understand like, well, what's this money about? And what's that money about? And where's this going? And where is that going? Right. Because at the end of the day, like we're the governing body that's being held accountable to this, and to the constituents and to the children, the families, the faculty and staff, the administration. Like we're ultimately that governing body that's being held accountable. And so we want to make sure that we are making good decisions, informed decisions. And so this has definitely been a lot of learning over the last few months.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's going to take a few more months because I'm like, okay, like I'll get it in that moment. And then I'm like, next month, I'm like, Andrew, I have another question. Like, what's that one about again? And
then we're still balancing our personal lives and our professions. And for people who don't know, school committee, we get paid the big bucks for doing this. You know what I'm saying? So we're, so it's a balance.
I'll tap your back and you can pat mine.
That's what we have to do. That's what we have to do. But
And I think people don't realize, right? Like, while
Right.
there is a once a month meeting, like there's these subcommittee meetings that are happening that are also available, open meeting laws. So people are welcome to, look on the schedule and come to those as well. And then we have other trainings or other things that we are held responsible for. And so you're right. It's not just a once a month meeting and, getting a packet and sitting there. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into it, to being prepared so that we are making the best decision for our youth and families and community.
And just to walk people through things, I always assume whenever I present that people may or may not know what we do. We can talk a little bit about it, Melissa. The New Bedford School Committee, there are 6 seats, and they're 4-year terms, and every 2 years, 3 candidates run. 3 seats are either up, or new candidates can decide to run. I'm saying that because Melissa and I are going to be in there for 4 years, and I think we both have different goals and things that we'd like to see done, but there is that learning curve, and so it's important that we understand things as much as possible while also being participants and asking those questions, learning to navigate. And I think it's important for people to understand that, because you don't have to be just politically astute and a history of the dirty economics and politics that go on around here to get in. If you care, you know what I'm saying, and you just want to say, I'd rather be part of making a difference as opposed to sitting back and complaining, get involved. Like I said, Melissa and I are still learning. I'm very transparent about that. Yeah. So I think people are seeing the importance of putting people in who have a sincere and genuine care, as opposed to going in and being that type of politician. That's the way I see it, Melissa, right?
Yeah, I'm big on the power of language, and so I see our positions as being public servants and not politicians.
Yeah,
right? Like, we are here to serve the public. I'm not here to get into the politics of all of it. I know that for me, I use like you, right? We're both social workers by education and by trade and whatnot, and so we have like a morals, our social work morals and values and code of ethics that we have to follow. And so really using that as my guide, as my North Star, to really just, as we go through and we're making these decisions and asking these tough questions of ourselves, of our community, of our, of our superintendent, of everyone sitting around that table, like, why, just because something's always been done, why? Why has it always been done that way? And, how can we change that? And so even this year, asking some of those questions, and we were able to change what some of those subcommittees looked like, right? Like what the titles were and what their work was going to be.
Melissa, and that's a really, really good point, because, and again, that's why, we're talking about the importance of getting out to vote, because just walking in, we saw some things that were, relatively procedural. And there was one position in particular where there was almost like just, we were operating within a cycle. It's this person's turn, that person's turn. And I understand that makes sense. But at the same time, it's important to have like further discussion, and why is it like that? And are there ways to make sure that we're exploring everything possible? Because ultimately the citizens of New Bedford, our students and our families, that's why we got on. I don't get the sense that they want people to just go in and say, all right, we're just going to go through business usual, because there are some issues in our schools. There are some issues that are going on in our communities, affect our schools. And there are wonderful things going on in our schools. The teachers are doing an incredible job, and our administrative team has an outstanding vision. So let's say that. But I think as elected officials, as public servants, as you say, Melissa, it's our duty and responsibility to go in there and challenge things. And if there are things that are just part of a machine that are just continually just moving on, I think it's good to have a fresh set of eyes in there, like yourself, myself, just to say, are there ways that we can do things different? Melissa, maybe we can talk about like, the new committees that we have. I'm on the governance and
policy, right?
Policy committee. I'm sorry. Yeah, policy. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And you're on the finance committee.
Yep. Finance and operations.
Yeah, finance. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've been doing or what you've learned so far?
Yeah, so I'll just go briefly through, because I thought, not only being a school committee member, but also being, someone who pays taxes in the city, and, so where does all of this money come from and go to, and like what's going on here? So like I said, so this past last week, I was able to have a really great conversation with Andrew, and hopefully, Andrew, if you get word of this, I hope I do this justice. But, we were talking about like revenue, right? Like, where does the city get its money from? So there's the general fund that there's a city portion of the budget. And so it comes from 1993. There was a law about the equity of school spending for adequate funding, which really talks about the foundation of funding. And so from that, because of the city's demographics and finance level, there's Chapter 70. So 85% from the state aid is to fund adequate education in New Bedford. There are other more affluent communities that it might be 5% or 15% of state aid. But in the city of New Bedford, we get 85% of our aid from the state funding.
Melissa, what do you think about that? Because I mean, I don't want that's because a lot of the problems that I see within the schools when I was working there, I felt came because there wasn't enough independence or autonomy within the school buildings. I mean, I think the central administration has to have their finger on the pulse of what's going on. But I thought that the way that we were teaching had become a cookie cutter approach, a hit or miss approach. And I felt that as educators, the creativity of our educators was being stifled, and a lot of it, and the value of the student was being transformed from educating the whole child to teaching them to a test. Now, I'm linking that to, we have a certain model that the schools are following by, and to get a diploma or to show growth. It's all through high stakes state mandated testing. And the fact of the matter is, 85% of our funding in the schools comes from that. So we're beholden to something that I think provides substantial obstacles to our children's best learning and a true well-rounded education. And I'm saying that only because I had worked in the schools for so long, and a lot of things that we're doing, and I think with the new environment, with the new superintendent, I think things are getting better. I want to commend him on that. But I still challenge, the whole thing with high stake, the test, the constant MCAS, constant assessments, and then teachers being observed and evaluated by that. But that's all tied to the state and the funding. And you're saying that, and I got off on my little tangent, which I always do when it comes to that. But what are your feelings on that? I mean, 85% of our money comes from there, and then
Yeah, so I mean, you're not going to get an argument from me regarding MCAS and high stakes testing. I think, and having this conversation with my kids who graduated from New Bedford Voc, I'm very transparent about like my kids' education, kind of where they studied and stuff. Welcome back, Charlie. Welcome back to our show.
Hey.
We're just going to keep
hey,
going.
we've been doing good, Charlie. Hey, Charlie, we're doing good.
This is crazy. This is
It's the Ross Grace jinx. I'm telling you, every time I'm on this show, at least it's not my computer this time. Usually it's mine's.
It's not over yet, Ross. Wait.
I know. Last time we had about 15 minutes left before I conked out.
No, so I mean, as far as like MCAS go, I totally disagree, right? I think that each child is individual and each child learns differently. I have a very person-centered approach. I don't know if that's my social work background or what it is. Yeah. And so giving a across-the-board test to where everyone grasp information differently. Like we know, like there are visual learners, there are auditory learners, there are kinesthetic learners, there are there are learners who need a little bit of each of those, right? So they're multidisciplinary learners, right? And so, but we give them all the same kind of testing. Right, and so that just makes like zero sense to me. And we also know that MCAS testing and any kind of high stake testing is rooted in systemic racism and classism and sexism, just because it's based on a Eurocentric model. It's in, and I remember there was a period of time that I was working in a public school department and I had to proctor an MCAS exam. And so I'm reading to this youth and I will never forget it. It was an entry on rock climbing, and they're talking about belays. Now, my kids had gone to Carabiners here in New Bedford, right? So they knew what a belay was, but that word in and of itself is not necessarily like an easy word to just kind of pick up off of context clues. So it really just it was evident to me at that point, just that if so this goes to the point of like classism, right? Like those youth who have those hands-on prior knowledge information that they can draw upon because they've been to carabiners, or maybe they've actually done like natural rock climbing, they're going to be able to read that passage without any kind of issue. Most chances are that most inner city youth haven't had that experience because they don't have the finances to be able to go to that. And so like just thinking about it through that lens, or like even reading a passage on the Statue of Liberty, right? Like it's one thing to read about it. It's another thing to like read about it and be like, oh yeah, we went there, we took the ferry, and you're able to draw on all of that prior knowledge, right? And so just realizing like how it's just disproportionate as to like who it affects. And, you know, so when you tie funding to it, right, like chances are that our inner city youth are just not going to do as well.
And then it's an important issue. And then Melissa's going to get back to the finance peak because we kind of hijacked the conversation. But my first time running, which I had lost, the conversation was talking about how the schools were making such significant gains because the scores were going up. And having worked in the schools, number one, the scores don't reflect all going on in the building. It doesn't reflect true learning. They can also be manipulated, different things. So the focus, while testing, I do understand the need, the role that it shouldn't be the centerpiece and the driving force of funding. It shouldn't be the centerpiece and the driving force of when students walk into the classroom, and it shouldn't be the focal point of how teachers are observed and evaluated. Is there a role for testing? Of course there is. There always has been. But the high stakes main data testing that's coming down the pipeline has an adverse impact on our students. I've seen it firsthand. And
Ross, to your point too, I also want to bring up, like, me and you are both social workers, right? And so the mental health component that goes into these testings. I can remember when I was at this particular school department, like come March and April, behavior starts to escalate because of anxiety.
Of course, that's right. Because of anxiety.
Because there's so much pressure, like do your best and let's have a pep rally and rah, rah, rah.
Yes.
And, you know, and it's just, there's so much pressure put on these youth that I would see them like completely melt down.
Yes.
And it was just,
and this is coming from personal experience. And the impact that it has on the entire building, and that's not learning. That's not learning. That's memorization. You can call it indoctrination. You can call it just learning students how to take tests, but that's not critical thinking. And again, it reverberates from the administrator to the teacher. And once that happens, you know, our role as school committee members, and they tell us this, is to make sure that the students come first. And students do come first. The best ways for students to learn is for there to be a healthy learning environment. And high stakes mandate testing compromises that. And again, I'm going back to the original point when I had first run, we're going, and again, that's questionable. And now the conversation isn't about that anymore. We're talking about how do we get back to making sure that the entire child is learning. What with the tons of resources that we've got coming into the schools, we're shifting the conversation and putting back on the needs of the child and the family. And so Melissa and I are bringing that to the table, and I don't know if there was that before. I know that there are other people in the school committee who share that. But so even when we're approaching things, we're approaching with a different philosophy that I think is more student-centered. But Melissa, we hijacked the conversation. I know you want to talk about. I know you started talking about the finance committee report with Andrew O'Leary, and we went off.
No, and I think, but it's all tied together, right? And so it's about having these conversations. And just, you know, for the people who are watching this at some point, right? So to have an understanding and to know that, you know, both Ross and I are available for like feedback and for conversations, like, because we all have different trainings or different trains of thought. And so, you know, like I want to hear from families. I want to hear from administration. I want to hear from faculty and staff, like what the concerns are, like how to better advocate, because at the end of the day, you're right, it's the student who's at the center of it all, and that's who it really needs to be about, you know, and making sure that we are making sure that our youth are ready for the next steps, whatever that is for them, whether it's college, the military, the workforce, whatever it is that they're a gap year, whatever it is, we just got to make sure that they're prepared for that. Yeah. And so I think, you know, the money is a big piece of it. we do, of the city's $450 million budget, the school department is asking for the upcoming year to be 215 million of it. And I know that's what that's what the superintendent's report was about this past week, was really just going through like highlighting a lot of the things that they have been able to do and what they want to continue to do. And that budget falls within, and that brings us back to like the net school spending. That would bring us to the baseline. Like, of course, we would always love to have more, but having that net school spending of $215 million for the upcoming school year would bring us to that, which our youth deserve that. They deserve to have the basic, the baseline. That's the minimum, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's good. When you guys are going throughout the city, different places, different venues, are you getting recognized immediately?
I hope not.
Or because there's a lot of there's political members that or political figures. What they do is they walk around the city and they're very, 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 very recognized, either famously or infamously. So, if you have, is that something you want in your life? Is it something that you going to Shaw's or Market-Basket or True Keys, or do you want to be recognized? Is that something that bothers you, and you want to say, "Hey, wait, time out. Talk to me on business hours," because throughout my career, I couldn't help but be recognized all over the place. So I had to step in. I couldn't say it was off duty or anything like that. So that's probably going to come with you too. You guys are very recognizable people. So,
I'll speak on that. Hey, it's interesting. Sometimes for me, Charlie, it all depends on the type of day I'm having, how I respond to it. And Melissa and I've grown up in New Bedford my entire life. The city's only so big, you know what I'm saying? So even prior to school committee, I coached Little League baseball for years. I was an activist, and I worked in the schools. So I've always known a lot of people. A lot of people have always known me. Again, New Bedford's small. Again, that's not saying anything too major. You get ourselves around. But being on school committee has heightened that. And again, sometimes it's nice, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times, because I'm a social person, I love talking. I don't care where I'm at. I don't care if I'm walking on City Hall. I don't care if I'm on Washington Square, baseball fields. It doesn't matter. Like, I like talking to people. I like hearing things. I enjoy that. And I like being asked questions about what's going on in schools. I like people bringing things to my attention and hitting me up on Messenger. And I want people to feel comfortable with that. I consider myself a people person, I'm not out there every day with a suit and tie, so people aren't going to say, look at me like that. I mean, I'm very, very, I'm relatively casual, but I get pulled aside a lot. But more than that, a lot of stuff on social media and a lot of questions. We want to encourage that, what I'm saying? We want people to feel comfortable. We don't want people to think that we have, a stick walking up us, or some people who are unapproachable. So we're people of the people, you know what I'm saying? But most of the time I enjoy that, you know what I'm saying? There's some days where you're rushing around and somebody will ask you something or pull you aside. But I enjoy that. I'm a New Bedford guy. You know what I'm saying? I love hearing from New Bedford people. So, but it definitely has increased. You know what I'm saying? It definitely has increased. And it's nice. You know what I'm saying? And that's why it's important for us to carry ourselves about respectfully and in a decent way. You know what I'm saying? Not that we're role models, except we want to come across in a way that says, there's a Latina in office and maybe I can do that. You know what I'm saying? When a young person watches. So, there's a Mr. Grace who grew up in Brickenwood and, maybe I can do that. So how we conduct ourselves is important too. So, but I enjoy that, Chai. That's a good question.
Well, Melissa has this hat. She's got like this baseball cap and it goes down. But I know who she is. I try to approach her. She was like a ninja. She was out. I didn't even know where she went. I'm only joking. I'm joking. You can say
no,
really.
So I gotta say, like running for office, I am relatively a private person. like if anyone knows me on social media, it's usually something I'm posting about my kids. Like I'm some kind of proud mommy moment is usually what kind of my social media is, or maybe like a vacation or something like that. So I am like, I am relatively like private as far as like that stuff goes. So like that was a little bit, it's uncomfortable, right? Because when you're running for public office, then you're putting yourself in the public's eye and you're putting yourself to public scrutiny. And so that can be a little bit uncomfortable. So you have to build up like a thick skin and, be open and ready to kind of receive some of that. And I know I have faults. I know I'm not always going to get it right. But I am definitely open to learning from people and learning from different perspectives. And, like I said, also keeping my compass, right. And knowing that what I need to make sure that I can go to sleep at night because the decisions that I make have positively impacted the life of children and families and, faculty and staff. That's really, why I got on, because at this point, my kids are through the public school system. They're actually graduating next month from college. And so
congratulations.
Thank you. And, like Ross, when you're sitting there saying like you're brick and wood, I was born in Satellite. I raised my kids in Amanda Ave, Dotton Place for 11 and a half years. Like I am a person of the city, like born and raised in New Bedford, went to Kearney Academy, went to Keith Junior High, went to New Bedford High, class of 1994, right? Like just totally New Bedford, born and bred. Never saw anyone who ever looked like me in this kind of position, even in school, like never saw a Latina teacher, through all of my time in New Bedford schools. I just didn't. I never saw a school adjustment counselor or a guidance counselor that looked like me. Just didn't. And it wasn't until I got to college that I saw my first Latina professor. I had one in undergrad at UMass Dartmouth, and I had one in grad school at Boston University. And so it was like, oh, okay. That just opens up. And, so when I ran for city council the first time, and I remember just like, when I won the primary election, just crying, because I was like, oh my gosh, like I can do this. Like people like me don't do this. I had internalized that oppression, right? Like I really believe that like Puerto Ricans in New Bedford, like we don't stand out, or we don't like that's what I believe in. That's so sad, right? So we have this whole generations of youth out there who have internalized that that's just not for them. And so, I recognize that by actually, being elected this time around in this particular position, because I had actually thought like, I'm kind of done with the political scene, after running twice, and doing fairly well both times. I was kind of like, just kind of done with it. And then just thinking about, I had a couple of people kind of approach me and just really advocate for me to, consider the school committee. And I have a long standing with the youth in the city, and through various roles that I have played within the city. And so it was like, okay, like I'll do it this time. And it was, and just when winning once again, like, oh my gosh, I want to be able to go into the schools and like talk to all the little Latino children. And, I brought a kid with me, a kid that I was working with from the city. He's a young Cape Verdean man. And I brought him with me to a meeting one day just prior to the actual inauguration. And, he's an inner city youth and he was actually going to night school that night, and I was bringing him. And I shared with him, I'm like, I'm going to be sitting at that table in a couple of months. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm actually going to have like a seat at the table. Nice. And it was just like, we just had like this moment, and I just kind of looked at him and I was like, and you can too. And don't ever think that you can't, like you deserve to be there. And he just kind of like looked at me and, and I brought him. But, and so being able to like have that kind of impact where people can see and people who are not of the marginalized or the disenfranchised population don't always understand that.
Right.
It's very easy for a white male predominantly, right, to see themselves in any and every position. And so they really believe that they can be whatever they want to be. And that's good, right? Like you should be able to. But youth of color, we just don't see ourselves in so many positions. And so when we do, it is like, wow. and it's empowering. And that's what we want all of our kids to feel. That we want them, when we tell them you can be anything you want to be, we want them to really be and feel that.
True. The what I liked about politics is that it when I ran it was something, and I'm pretty sure you two have felt the same way. It's something that I didn't experience other than casting a ballot, but to go through that whole experience, that's a great experience. So now when I'm walking, and walking the streets or hearing different buzz about this person want to run or this person not running, so there's going to be more people in the arena. So what I do is I always tell everyone, run, do the best you can, but run. Get to experience that, because you never know, you may be the inspiration or you may be the guidance for the next person. So just run. And that was a great experience, and a lifetime accomplishment for me. And whether win, lose, or draw, it still was a great experience that I enjoy talking about, regardless of what points are bringing, coming at me or whatever. I still love it. I love that experience. I love talking about it, and so. But
I loved, the first time around, I was so scared of door knocking. Like, oh my gosh, like, hi, I'm Melissa Costa and I'm running for, I was like, what are they going to do? Like, I don't know what people, and people were so kind and just like, and they would share their, concerns or their experiences. And it was just like, wow, like we really do have a great community if we're open to listening. And just, who doesn't like to be listened to, right? And heard and validated.
True.
And I think that comes with the whole sincerity piece, and like Melissa hit the nail on the head when she's talking about the word being a public servant. There's a lot of reasons that people can seek office. You can do it. You use each thing as a platform to move on to another position, and you become like a lifelong politician. Or you can see different gaps, or you can see different holes in different systems in your city, and you say, I'd like to make a difference. And I think I bring some value. I think I bring some expertise. I think it's important to be that person that, like Mr. was saying, that young people can say, look at Miss Costa. She's the very first Latino. Yeah, look at Mr. Grace, a Cape Verdean man. I can do that. And again, that's how things change. Charlie and I, we come from a history of the civil rights movement, the Black Power. And to me, it's a continuation of that. Before it was, a lot of the issues our parents face are still around today. But I think their signature achievement was being an inspiration and opening the doors for us to be part of the political process, or be part of the entire process. And again, we want to come to a day where we're not the first anymore. We want to have just that way and that type of value system within our community, that any Latina, any African American, any Haitian, any Irish, Portuguese, Asian person can run and reflect the needs of that community. You know what I'm saying? So I think just the fact that people came out and made that decision. And again, I commend anybody. And Charlie, like I said, you inspired me. And I think just by us being in this position, Melissa, hopefully inspires other people. And then it continues. You know what I'm saying? That domino effect, or the notion that, you light a candle and it starts a flame, So it's also our civic responsibility and duty, I think.
And I think people also need to realize, I know it was a huge learning curve for me too, right? I think one of our big fails in public education, probably any education, is civics, like civic duty, and really the importance of voting. And, and I really have gotten on the platform over the last 5 or so years. Like, there is an election every single year, whether it's national, statewide, local politics, there is an election happening every single year. So it's not, you don't just vote every 4 years, for the presidential, especially when I think about our local politics, right? That's your schools, that's your roads, and that's your trash pickup days, right? Like that's what comes out of that, right? And so those elections have impact. You know, and so we really need to, you know, I'd like to see us do more with like that civic engagement piece. You know, how to get involved, how to, you know, what are your responsibilities as a U.S. citizen, you know, and what's that like, you know, registering to vote, you know, really getting out to register to vote. Maybe that's something that we can bring up, like something that can happen at the high school. You know, a lot of our seniors are turning 18 or may have turned 18 already. So making sure that we have like these voter registration drives happening right now at the school, getting them registered to vote. Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you can actually register, like, I think like, is it 6 months or a year before you actually even turn 18? So we can get all of those seniors registered to vote and, you know, make them feel empowered in their decision making. So
well, I don't know what they're doing now, but my first paperwork, as far as, you know, being able to vote, was done right at the high school, and they brought us right in, all the seniors into the auditorium, and we filled out everything. We filled out everything right there.
That's right.
Whether you wanted to, you know, some people didn't, but, you know, maybe a lack of understanding, like voting. But I remember right in New Bedford High School auditorium, we filled out the paperwork right there, and the city officials took all the information, and we were ready to vote. In my case, it was relatively quick. I think shortly after that, I casted my first vote. I'm really, really impressed with the whole school committee. Hey, and by the way, I bought Chris Carter a comb, and he got upset with me. He was so upset. You know, we've been friends for all these years, and he was upset with me. But I can't wait to get that dude on here, because
we got to get Chris.
We have some deep conversations, so we're gonna try to get him on for the next month. And
we have such a diverse board.
You should do.
We have a diverse board. Just to go over it again, you know, like I said earlier, I always present these things for the people who may be listening the first time, just so people are aware, just to hear around makeup. We have Mr. Chris Carter, police officer, very stand-up guy, very knowledgeable. We have Mr. Bruce Oliveira. He's part of the finance committee. The guy's just wonderful with the books, a source of information, and a very strong resource. You have Mr. Jack Livamento. He's part of the Cape Verdean community, a member of Our Lady of Assumption Church. You know, you have Miss Colleen DeWicki. This is a second term, who's experienced, just a good mother. So I think we have a real good group of people. And I think what did catch me off guard a little bit, Charlie, is, and Melissa, you can share your thoughts, is, you know, it's one thing when you're reading things, and it's one thing when you're seeing things on news. It's another thing when you're actually dealing with people. And I get the sense that for the most part, the people are in it for the right reasons. I had very strong feelings against the prior administration when I was working in the schools, and I felt that things were being grossly mishandled, mismanaged, and misreported. I just felt that there was an awful lot of stuff. But I have to say, with Mr. Anderson, I think the job is easy because I find him to be very open. I think his vision is aligned with some of my values. So, you know, I support a lot of the stuff that he's doing. And usually if there are things of concern, I've been able to bring to attention, and his team has acted upon it. What I do see as my role is he believes in autonomy of each individual building, which I support. What I think our role can be is making sure that his vision is being translated into those buildings. We want to make sure that what his ideals are in terms of diversity, in terms of equity, in terms of putting the value on the whole child, in terms of being open to parents, that's actually translating into the building, because what goes in the classroom is reflection of leadership. And so we want to make sure that our principals, and we know this, there are some who are there for the right reasons, but we also have some principals, we have to make sure that they're doing what's in the best interest of their students and their staff, because if staff is being treated poorly, that translates into the classroom. So, you know, we work with the unions. We want to encourage teachers who are watching us. We want to encourage support staff, paraprofessionals, that if you have concerns, first, always address your principal as your administrator. But if you have concerns and you feel like falling upon deaf ears, or you're feeling like retaliation or retribution, we don't want that. That's not the way our school should be run. Make sure you reach out to the school committee, and we can bring it to the appropriate channels, whether the union sector or even the administration. I do think Mr. Anderson does listen, so but you're out there, so we want to make sure that his vision is being translated. But it's been a pleasure working with him and the rest of the team. I thought it was going to be much more combative, but I really think that the people who are in are trying, and there are plenty of flaws, and we are addressing them. But I feel comfortable with people who are at least trying, and there are things that we do need to challenge and push back upon. But I do think that people have the right intentions, and I don't know how you feel about that, Melissa.
Yeah, and I think that, I know that this past week, and I don't know how you felt about it, but I know the question came up that I raised regarding like just the advanced classes, right? And that there's been an increase in the number of youth who are taking like AP courses and IB courses and early college courses and stuff like that. And so I know that, my question was really around, what are the gender of those youth? What is the race and ethnicity of those youth? What's the socioeconomic status of those youth? Because that's going to really get to the core of like equity. If we have a 40% Latino population attending New Bedford public schools, but only 5% of the youth, and this is completely, I don't know what the number is, right? But let's just say it's like only 5% of the youth who are taking these advanced courses are Latino. That's a huge discrepancy, right? And so we need to kind of figure out what's going on there. If I believe our city is 35, 38% white, but are they making up 35, 40%, or are they making up 80, 90%, right? And so and even thinking about, one of the other questions I asked too that Mr. Anderson will get back to me on is, are these kids coming from particular elementary schools or middle schools, right? Because that can also drop, that's also data, and we hate the D word, data, but that's also information that then guides some of our conversation. Like, why are particular youth from certain areas getting into these programs more than youth in other areas? What's that about? And that really drills down to equity. We absolutely want every child to be as successful as they can. And so we need to make sure that we're digging into that information to kind of draw out some of that.
True. And sometimes, we gotta throw some things out there. Mm-hmm. Ross and Melissa, you both know, one of the most fascinating things to see at the New Bedford Boys and Girls Club was the former members that went to college.
Yeah.
And they were draped along the wall as you walk towards the back way. And I think schools should do that too, classrooms. This was a former student at Kearney Academy or Winslow, or I think those perceptions should be there in the school, at a very young age, young age to start, because when you walk in your room, in your home, your home of your mom or dad, your grandmother, grandfather, aunts, uncles, and you see their degrees on the wall at a young age, and you start looking at it, even with the military service, as I see my uncle's picture on the wall, I was so mesmerized about that picture and his ship, the Navy and everything. And I said, wow. And that impacted that was a great perception, and it was a reality because that was my uncle on the wall. Mm-hmm. And you could do the same thing in making that picture of that student, a former student at Parker School, that's on the wall. Yes. And they just attended Boston College, or they just, So
I will have you know, because you said Parker School. When you walk into Parker School, there is I will never forget this, the Barbara S. Kestenbaum Award. And my name is the very first name on that plaque, if it's still up.
Good. Very nice.
In sixth grade. Back when they had sixth grade in the elementary schools.
Charlie, that's so important what you're talking about, because you're talking about, first of all, number one, everybody, it's that connection. And when kids see, Melissa was saying, when students see people like them or of them, doing big things. I mean, all kids want to be celebrated. All kids want to feel good. You know what I'm saying? All kids want that pat on the back. And if they see people like them, and you're walking into the building and you're seeing those models, it's an incentive, and it sends a message through the building and through the students and to the families who walk in the door that when you invest in yourself and your child, and we invest in ourselves, that something comes out of it. You know what I'm saying? And what it also does is it creates a history, and it enhances the culture within the buildings. County Academy was good for that. You walk in, you see a picture of Dr. Waters. We had talked when I was there doing like a wall of fame to an extent. For the outstanding achievements of what students who went to County Academy did. But that would be something that it would be a fun project in the schools. You know what I'm saying? It enhances the environment. But that's a really good idea, Charlie. You know what I'm saying? And those are the type of things, those are the discussions that we should be talking about, what goes on in our school buildings. And again, that's why, Melissa and I started this conversation going after MCAS and high stakes mandated testing. But that stuff, and I'm telling you, it impedes upon that because people are so concerned with these walkthroughs and stuff, that all the creative stuff, all the stuff that makes a building unique, that makes you a building inviting, all that stuff is taking a back seat to other priorities. But Charlie, that's an easy fix, and that's something that that we should be able to do in all the schools. So
Ross, I gotta tell you, I've had this conversation with like colleagues of mine, right? So because I went to Kearney, you went to Kearney, right? Like we went still with like Dr. Waters, June Pina, like just number of staff of color. So I thought everyone had that experience growing up, and then you realize like no, they didn't.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was like, what? Like my first principal was a man of color, like he was PhD, like right. So like just to know that we have like that base of of understanding. And I remember I was like, and I remember at Kearney, right? Like every month was a different theme. So I remember like Black History Month, and every classroom had to create the bulletin boards that would then put on display in the hallway. And then we would have like Career Awareness Month. Yeah. And like you'd always have to do like there was always like some month activity. And that's like that's where like learning happened.
Yes. And that's where we've gotten so far away from. And again, I don't want to turn this into a whole, but we took such a shift in the wrong direction because school's about learning and making connections within the mind to the environment and reality around us. But once you're in the workforce, that's where you gain the skills. What school did for me was a sense of having an identity, of believing in myself, of overcoming obstacles, of relating to other people. And that's what took me to where I'm at. And a lot of the stuff I learned in school, I forgot about. A lot of the test taking approaches that they focus and drill upon our kids. I don't remember, but I remember that teacher believing in me. I remember that teacher who said, "Oh, you did better on test," pulling me aside and helping me make sure that I did better. Or why didn't you do well on the test? You know what I'm saying? What's going on at home? And that's what I think we've gotten away from in the schools. And so, Charlie, you're talking about something that's a common sense, nice approach. It's a feel-good thing. It creates a strong environment in the building. And those are the fun things that we learn more, we do better, we're enjoying what we're doing. And when we're in that environment, then education and the true learning occurs, and you're going to see, this whole score thing go up. When people feel good about what they're doing and feel part of it, then you're going to give more. And that's what we're hoping at. And, that's what we want the culture of the entire district to be. And I think, I do think Mr. Anderson carries that with him. I really do. But we have to make sure that's going on in the buildings, because I can tell you from firsthand experience that that's not going on in some of our buildings. And there are some leaders who have a point of view that doesn't reflect the values of what we're trying to do here. And it's important for us to say that
will come out. That will come out. You know that when you're not doing things the right way, it all shows up later on. And it shows up when that administrative how do you want to say, let's say the supervisor comes up, that supervisor decides to come into your school. You know what? Yeah. And when you're not doing things the right way, guess what?
Yeah.
People talk. And they're going to talk, and it's going to put a buzz in someone's ear, and then they're going to kind of pay attention a little bit more, So we all know that. And
You're right, and we are seeing some of those changes right now, actually, and I think there's some good ones. So.
And we know that with any change, right, it takes a couple of cycles before you actually see the effects of that change. We're an immediate gratification society, and so bringing back that delayed gratification, instituting a new policy, which Ross gets to be a part of those policies. So instituting that, and hopefully seeing the positive effects of that impact on that.
Exactly.
It's exciting times, it really is, and it's fun. And again, I become very repetitive, but for those who are watching, spread the word, get involved. Outside of it being it's a civic duty. People gave their lives. People went to prison for us to be here. And we don't know, just by us being here, just by us speaking upon this, just by Charlie being a former officer, me being an administrative school committee member, Melissa being a social worker, and now being a school committee member, just our presence and being involved. I was inspired by Charlie, and we were inspired by other people, and that's why we're here. And hopefully we can send that. In your days, we had the Manny Costas, we had the Jack Custodios, we had those the Duncan Dantons, we had those people out there, and it's our responsibility to be those people now, the best that we can, the best that we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of my
Jack
all-time
Custodio.
favorites.
Wow, you brought it back.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Mr. Custodio, come on.
We had I had Rosemary Pereira. She was down at the Acushnet Avenue School, which is no longer there. But she was able to grab a couple of us, or several kids at a very young age. And I was only in the 3rd grade. But she sat me down and taught me how to take my time when I'm writing, my time. And said it's very, very important. She said, we're going to take this paper and we're going to put it on the board. So we want to see how good your writing is. We want people to see it. We want Miss Cahal. Remember Miss Cahal from the Gomes School? She was at the Acushnet Avenue School as our principal. She's going to see it. So, and she was very inspirational to me at a very, very young age. And I hope that we have many, many, many more Rosemary Pereiras and all the people that you talked about. June Pino, may she rest in peace.
Yes.
Mrs. Furno and Mr. Furno, he was part of the piece too,
Yes.
So
we, many.
And it just goes on and on. Mr. Callanan, Mr. Longo, those people, they all had things, a huge part of my life, so, and Miss Purcell,
Well, yeah.
Yep. So, I just
never underestimate the impact of an educator, right?
Yep.
We know research shows, right, that in order to be successful, you need to have at least one positive adult role model in your life. And so what that means for that youth, that here we are 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, whatever it is, and you still remember your 1st grade teacher or your 3rd grade teacher. You remember their name, and more so, might not remember necessarily what you learned that year, but you remember how you felt.
Right.
True.
Right. So just like how they made you feel, right? She made you feel special. And because she believed in you, you internalized that and you believed in yourself.
I was a Title I student, and Mrs. White, Miss Mendes, and
bless you.
Being bless you. A Title I student. There was in elementary school. Well, they followed me throughout my whole life.
Yeah.
And I got recognized in the state. I got recognized in the country for being a distinguished Title I student and going on to college to graduate in Newberry College. I loved that school. It was perfect for me. And, so those teachers, here they are, they had thousands of students after me.
Yeah.
And they recognized me, and I was dumbfounded, and I mean, it was amazing. So I love teachers.
Yeah.
And I got a huge appreciation for them when I was a school resource officer because I was behind the scenes.
It's so important to recognize that because, society is shaped by how we treat our young people and what they learned. You know, that's the bedrock. That's the foundation of any society in our community. And our teachers are the front line. They're the consistent person in a child's life. Sometimes more consistent than what they have at home. Not all the time, but sometimes they're the most consistent thing that a child deals with. A teacher can spend more time with a child than a parent. And so when we're in times of COVID and a parent is dealing with taking care of their child and their needs, but also our children and our children's needs, it's important to recognize what teachers do each and every day. And the fact of the matter is, when we're working together, it's easy. And especially today, we live in a very polarized times. You know, whenever something isn't seen the way that we want it to be or seen through our perspective, we'll lob hand grenades at another. But when we work together with our teachers, and we're having an open line of communication, and our teachers are working with our families, and we're all pulling in the same direction, that translates into the child and their belief within themselves, and that's going to help them plot a future that's best for them. But it's important that we work together. And again, if you are frustrated, work with your teacher, work with the administrator. And if you feel that you're not meeting, that they're not getting the results that you'd like, explore other options within them. But if we're going into combative mode and we're tearing each other apart, ultimately that only impacts the schools, which impacts our children. This is a societal issue. What we're dealing with in our schools isn't just the teachers, it isn't just the children, it's just the families. We're all interconnected. So when we all do our part and communicate and work together, then I think it makes a difference for everybody,
So true.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to close with Melissa. Any points you have? Anything you wanna say? Broadcast, podcast. You can even say "really, Charlie" if you want. Anything.
Really, Charlie? Really? I think it needs to become really, Charlie. Really?
Yeah.
No, I want to thank you both for the opportunity to speak. And I echo what Ross was saying as far as other people out here who are listening, watching, however you get your information, knowing that we are available, whether via email, whether at the grocery store, whatever it is, we are available. We are here to serve you and, your family, your school, your community. That's why we're here. I'm not here for me by any means. I'm here to serve the people of the New Bedford community. And I also just want to say, anyone interested in running, for any position in the city, please do so. It's a great way to learn about the city, to learn about, the different things that are going on, what people are really dealing with, what they're struggling with, what's going well, learning about all of that. And, no matter what, if you are 18 plus, vote. That is your civic duty. That is your, responsibility. And, it enhances and the work that we can do when we get out there and we vote. So, Charlie, keep up the great work of your guests on here. And Ross, I look forward to continue working with you. We've got 3.5 more years.
Right. Yeah.
Good. That's a good thing. That's a very good thing. All right. Well, feel free to come on this podcast anytime, any place. Where I came on later, you guys did a great job. Checks in the mail. I will give you a portion of the proceeds.
Hey, I made it through the whole episode, Charlie, without one technical glitch today. First time.
Yeah.
Oh, you did have a couple of moments where you kind of froze for a quick second, Ross.
Yeah.
But you came back. Came back.
So we'll give them an A-. All right.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Melissa. It's a pleasure. And thank you, New Bedford.
Thank
you, everybody out there. Have a good one, guys. Have a good night.
Thank
you.
All right. Take care. I appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
All right.
That was the great school committee members, Melissa Ortega-Costa and Ross Grace Jr. I really, really am proud that they came on here. And you see how they are. They adapted. We had some technical problems here, and they knew what to do. They said, look, the people want to hear from us school committee members, and we're going to do it until we're going to do this podcast until Charlie gets back on. And they did it. They did a fabulous job. And I'm very, very proud of the school committee from top to bottom, and they're a great team. You listen to them, you listen to everything that they're trying to do, and they're actually great advocates for our city. And Melissa mentioned about students, staff, you students, staff, the parents, you have to be that liaison for all of them. And we all got to work together. And it's one thing I always said, that you have to have a triangle. It'll be teacher, parents, and student. Once you have that triangle together, anything's possible. And we got a great crew that we should be proud of. And let's continue to support the New Bedford School Committee. And they're here on the Really Charlie podcast once a month. After their monthly meeting, they come on the very following week. Some are busy, and Ross has took the reins of it, and he asked everybody to come on, and Colleen has come on, Melissa has come on. We're going to try to get a few others. I'm going to reach out to Mr. Oliveira, even Mr. Anderson, and get them on here. The mayor, anybody. I need them to come on and just give their points of view and be very transparent. All right, this is the Really Charlie podcast. I really, really appreciate you listening. And I'm on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Buzzsprout. That's buzzsprout.com. You can hear all of the podcasts. I upload them immediately, so they're on Buzzsprout. If you go to Anchor and Spotify, it's going to direct you right back to Buzzsprout. But the podcasts are there. And feel free, you want to get a guest on a Really Charlie podcast. My email is simple, reallycharliepodcast@gmail.com. Send me an email or get in touch with me on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Appreciate y'all. And I'm going to end this podcast with my intro song by Lionel Peter Walker. My man. God bless everyone. And you only live once. So say I love you to the people that you love. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. All right, y'all. Take care.
It's the Really Charlie podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie podcast. Bump into your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie podcast. Bump into your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass.